Hey everyone and welcome back. Now in today's video we'll be discussing about creating our first EC2 instance in AWS. So today's topic is very interesting and there are a lot of new learnings that we'll have in this video. So let's get started. Now one of the very important service in AWS is EC2. So EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. So in short, it is a name for a server that you launch in AWS. So one very important part to remember is that depending upon the cloud provider that you choose, the name of the server will change. So in a typical environment, we just call or we just refer it as a server. So in AWS, you call that server as EC2. If you go into DigitalOcean, then you call it as Droplet. If you go into Azure, then the naming convention differs again. So depending upon the cloud platform that you choose, there are different names that the vendor provides. Alright, so just remember that for AWS, EC2 is nothing but a server. Now, one interesting thing here is this first part called as Elastic. Now, if you have gone through our video of Elastic, you would know what exactly elasticity means, and that is the power of AWS as well. The reason why it is called as Elastic is because the size of the server can vary. So let's say that today you create a server of 2 GB RAM. Now tomorrow you can resize that server to 64 GB of RAM. Or maybe day after tomorrow again you can scale down the server to maybe 1 GB of RAM. So that aspect in which you can resize the server is what is referred as the elastic over here. So that's the reason why it's called as the Elastic Compute Cloud. Now, whenever you launch a server in AWS or whenever you launch a EC2 instance in AWS, there are certain important configuration that you need to know while doing that. The first important configuration is the CPU and memory size. Now again, all depends upon the application and the workload that you will be running on top of AWS. So the first, CPU and memory, is very important. How much CPU and memory you need for the server. Second important configuration is the operating system. If you need a Linux based operating system, if you need a Windows based operating system for your server. So that is the second important configuration. Third important configuration is the storage capacity. How much disk do you need? Do you need 10 GB? Do you need 100 GB? Do you need 1000 GB? So that is what you can specify. Fourth is the authentication key. So this is the authentication key through which you will be logging into the EC2 instance. So that is also something that you can specify. And fifth is the security group, which is nothing but the firewall. We'll be discussing more about firewall in a moment here. But just remember that these are the 5 important configurations at this point of time based on the knowledge that we have. Now, one interesting thing that you would have noted is that on the left hand side you have a server, but on the right hand side you have a different icon for the server altogether. So in AWS, depending upon the service that you choose, AWS has its own icon for each service. In fact, let me quickly show you this. So this is a PPT which contains all the icons which are officially released by AWS. So for different kind of resource, you have a different kind of icon over here. So they have basically divided into multiple service. For analytics service, they have a different icon. So if you go a bit down, then you have an application integration. If you go a bit down, then you have a cost management and so on. So this icon that we see over here, this is the icon associated with the EC2 instance. Now generally, as we were learning, we make use of a generic icon, but when we move forward and go into the technical details, we'll be using the icons which are officially provided by AWS for the service that we discuss. Great. So that's the high level overview about EC2. So what we'll do, let's go ahead and create our first EC2 instance in AWS. Now, I'm already logged into the AWS. So let's do one thing. Let's go to the services and within compute, you see that you have EC2 over here. So you can click here, or you can even add a EC2 and it will auto search it for you. So let's click on EC2 over here. And from here, you can either click on launch instance, or you can go to the instances tab. And currently you see that there are no EC2 instance that are available. So you can click on launch instance from here. So within the step 1, it is asking you to select a AMI. So that basically means it is asking you to select a appropriate operating system. As we were discussing, there are multiple operating systems that are available. So you have certain Linux based ones, you have a Red Hat. Now if you go a bit down, you also have operating system like Microsoft Windows and others. So what we'll be doing in today's video, we'll be making use of the Amazon Linux 2 operating system, and this operating system is officially provided by the AWS. So we'll be using this specific one. Let's go ahead and click on select. Now within the step 2, you have to select an instance type. That basically means you have to select the appropriate CPU and memory size of the EC2 instance that you are launching. So currently you see that there are multiple ones. You have vCPU of 1, memory of 1. If you go a bit down, you have CPU of 96 and you have memory of 384 GB. Now, in fact, if you go more down, you even have memory sizes like 768 GB. So you see there are a lot of configuration in terms of instance types that are available. So what we'll be doing is we'll be using the one which has the free tier eligible. So that basically means that this EC2 instance will not be charged. Alright, so always make use of this free tier eligible. So here it is referred as T2.micro, but at a later stage the name might change. It might be T3.micro and so on. But one indication is this free tier eligible tag over here. Once you have done that, let's click on next. So currently there are a lot of configurations that are available. We'll not be discussing in detail about this right now, but one interesting thing here is number of instances. So currently it is 1. That basically means one EC2 instance will be launched, but you can even refer as 10. So that basically means at the end of this setup, 10 EC2 instance will be launched. If you select 100 EC2 instance will be launched. So that is what the first option does. However, we do not really want that. We'll be using the number of EC2 instance as 1 over here. Now again, before we proceed, one important part to remember here is that for the free tier eligible, always make sure that you have only one EC2 instance that is running all the time. If you run multiple instances, then you will be charged for that. So let's click on next, and the next screen is associated with the storage. So by default you have a 8 GB of storage that has been assigned, but if your application needs more, then you can also assign 100 GB or 1000 GB and so on. However, we'll leave it as default. We'll use it as 8. Now let's click on next. The step 5 is add tags. So this is something that we'll ignore for now. Let's click on next. And here you have a security group configuration similar to what we were discussing here. So security group is basically the firewall here. We'll be discussing more in detail about it at a later stage, but just remember to assign a new security group over here. You can call it as KP Labs-firewall. Just give a name of the security group and make sure that you have a rule something similar to this, where the type is SSH, protocol is TCP, port is 22, and you have a 0000/0 over here. Alright, once done, you can click on review and launch, and you can click on launch. Now within the launch, you would see that it is asking you to select a key pair for authentication. Now we have already created one key pair, and that is the reason why this one key pair is available. Now you can also decide to proceed without a key pair. Now if you proceed without a key pair, that basically means that the EC2 instance will be launched, but you will not be able to log in. However, we do not want that. We want to log in. So this is the reason why we'll be using our existing key pair that we have already created earlier. We'll select this checkbox of I acknowledge, and you can click on launch instances. So here it states that your instances are now launching. So let's click on this specific instance ID over here, and if you see that our instance is currently within the pending state. Now you can also decide to name your EC2 instance. So you can give a random name over here. So let me just call it as kplabs-ec2 over here. Alright, so you see you have a kplabs-ec2. Now within the status check, currently it is within the initializing stage. So it is better to wait for a few minutes for the status check to be completed. Alright, so it took around 2 minutes, and if you see the status check is now 2 out of 2. That basically means that our server is up and running without any problem. So now the next thing that we want to do is we want to log in to the server. So in order to log in, we have to copy this public IP. This is very important. So let's do one thing. Let's click on copy button here. And from our mobile Xterm, you can click on start local terminal. Now, before we log into the server, we already know that we had created our key in AWS, and the server that will be logging in will be using this key that we have downloaded within our laptop. So what we'll do is first we'll go ahead and copy this key to our desktop, because this is the key through which we'll be logging in. So in my case, this is the ec2-key.pem. So let's do one thing. Let me copy this up, and within my desktop, I'll go ahead and I'll paste this key. So this is the key that we'll be using to log in. Now, from our mobile Xterm, the first command that you need to do is you have to go to desktop. And this command would remain the same in case if you're using the Mac. Again, this command will work in Mac as well. Now, once you are into the desktop, and if you do a ls over here, you will see that there is a key called as ec2-key.pem that is available. So one quick thing that you will have to do is you have to change the permission for this specific key. So what this command basically does is that it reduces the permission of this key. Now we know that through this key you can log into the server. So in your laptop there can be multiple users. So when you run this command, it removes the permission of other users so that they'll not be able to access this specific key. So at a high level overview, that's what it is doing. So once you have run this command, the next step is that we can go ahead and log into the EC2 instance. So let's go ahead and do that. So in order to log in, we'll be making use of SSH, and then we'll specify our key file, which is ec2-key.pem, and then we'll be making use of a user. So this is the username, which is ec2-user. And the next thing, you have to copy the IP address here and add that IP address within the CLI. Once you have done that, you can press enter. And now you see you are automatically logged into the EC2 instance. So once you have logged into the EC2 instance, you can do whatever you intend to do. You can run your own application, you can create your own website. There are a lot of interesting things that you can do in a Linux server. So that's the high level overview about how you can create a EC2 instance in AWS. I hope this video has been informative for you, and I look forward to see you in the next video.